மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.
Hey guys, and welcome back. So for this next exercise, I actually want to show the full game, because there is some backstory behind this game, and I think there's many instructive moments throughout this game, so hopefully there's a lot of insights to be gained. Now, I played this game a few years ago. I had the black pieces, and I was playing a friend of mine, but also a rival of mine, Sam Schmeichel, who at the time, very strong master. He recently got his final IM norm, so he'll be an IM within the next FIDE Congress. So when he played this game, he was going for a win because I was the clear leader of the tournament. I had, I believe, 4 out of 4 going into the last round. He had 3.5 out of 4. So all I needed to do was draw to clinch the first place prize, and he was playing for a win. And this was around the time where I didn't know too much London theory, and I played perhaps a not-so-theoretical line. So I want to show that. Going forward here, we have a very typical line, which we've seen many times before. The first moment where I do something a bit different is on move 6, I play bishop to e7. Nowadays, I know this is actually a very somewhat trendy move, as the bishop on e7 actually prepares to play knight h5. And the idea of knight h5 is just to force a trade knight for bishop. So if white plays something like bishop to d3, knight h5 would be very playable, and then the line can continue, bishop g3, knight takes g3, h takes g3, and then h6, and there's chances for both sides in this line. After I played bishop e7, though, in the game, Sam started thinking, probably realized I had some plan of knight h5, and he played h3, which looks like a very normal move, giving room for the bishop, preparing to meet knight h5 with bishop h2, so knight h5 would not make any sense, at least in that position. Nowadays, I know that there's a very funny move that black can play here, and the funny move is to simply play bishop to d6. I call this a funny move, but it's probably one of the strongest moves in the position, given that this is one of the most main lines in the London, except white has an extra move, h3. And even though black has essentially wasted a tempo playing bishop e7 and then bishop d6, the argument is that h3 is actually hurtful to white, because bishop g3 is no longer a good move here, as the pawn is no longer on h2. So white would have to choose a different move here, perhaps something like knight e5 or d takes e5, and it would lead to a slightly different line compared to the main line. But I didn't play bishop d6. Now, if I had this again, I would probably go for something like this, knowing if I only needed a draw, it's a good attempt for black to equalize. But in this game, I castled, and play continued. We both developed, and an interesting moment happened around here. After knight e5, I decided to take, and then after take, I played knight e4. And in this position, I'm just offering trades. I would have been very happy if he were to take on e4, and after d take e4, black's at least equal, given that things are just trading, and the pawn is well defended by the bishop on b7. So going back here, he thought for a long time, and he played a move which was completely unexpected. Looks like a very bizarre and perhaps childish move. He played the undeveloping knight to b1, bringing the knight back to its starting square. And even though it looks weird, it does have some idea. What it's doing is it's preventing black from trading off the knight on e4. And in some cases, white might like to play f3, and if knight g5 could be forced, then h4 would trap the knight. So I did have to take some precautions here. This prompted me to play f5, simply reinforcing the knight. And then if f3 is played, I would be happy to play some move like knight g5, and then, if necessary, h4, I could then play knight f7 with a very fine position. So, going back to this case, he decided to take on f6 en passant, knight take f6, queen e2, bishop d6, bishop take d6, queen take d6, and knight d2. And we have what seems to be a very comfortable position for black, which it pretty much was. I continued with rook a d8. He continued with rook a d1. And in this position I got a bit careless, and I took some time. I had some candidate moves in mind. The main move I wanted to play, which I really should have played, is e5. Just to demonstrate this, I didn't play e5 because I was a bit scared of pawn e4, given that there's some alignment with the rook on d1, line with the queen on d6. But there was really nothing to be concerned about with this move. I could play something simple like king h8 here, and just have a pretty well defended center. And if pawn take e4, I could take back with the queen. And actually, this is hitting the bishop on d3 and the pawn on g2, so that would not be playable. So going back to this position, this is one of the biggest opportunities I missed to just get a very comfortable position to play going forward. So going back to this moment, before I play e5, I played the perhaps safe move queen c6, getting off the d file first, still potentially considering e5, also considering ideas like d4, but unfortunately none of these worked out. And from this point forward, Sam played just an incredible positional and tactical masterpiece. He played at an extremely high level, and he found a move here which I think is difficult for a lot of players to play. And I know this is a tactics course, and this position was given as perhaps a tactical exercise, but it was really an exercise to find the best move. And there is one clear best move for white that if you're able to find, then you're clearly able to think at a relatively high level. So let me go ahead and show that move. The move is pawn f4. And I know it looks weakening. I know like it leaves the e-pawn perhaps a bit backwards. It exposes the white king a bit. But the really important positional idea here for white, which will enable future tactics, is the idea to control this e5 square. And white has a simple plan of knight f3 and knight e5, and this is not easy to stop. If we see what happened in the game, I was actually a bit uncomfortable because it's now hard for black to generate active play. A move like d4 really doesn't accomplish anything because g2 is defended. White could just take, and after the trade, go for something like e4, have a very fine position. So in the game, I played the move queen to e8, anticipating that the knight's going to come to e5 and attack my queen, so I figured I'd move my queen somewhere else. Sam went ahead, he plays knight f3, and now I play queen h5. And my idea is I'm trying to slow down knight e5, as well as slow down plans of g4, because the queen would be, in some respect, pinning the knight to the white queen, as white doesn't want to trade queens here, and also the g-pawn is tied down to the h3 pawn. Now Sam played another really nice, impressive move, very subtle move. He played queen to e1, somewhat of a quiet move, but the plan is to simply avoid the queen trade and just get the knight to e5. He realized because he's the one who has attacking potential in the position, it doesn't make any sense for him to trade queens. And this is a common mistake I see among a lot of players. Sometimes they allow queen trades when it benefits their opponent, and they don't realize that it would benefit them to keep queens on the board. So Sam made the right decision here, kept queens on the board. The game continued, rook f8, knight e5. And as we can see, I was forced to kind of just wait around. I was trying to somehow improve the position, but it wasn't easy. My bishop on d7 is just out of play. My rooks don't have any great open files to control. And meanwhile, white is able to expand. And going forward here, Sam plays another strong move. And I would encourage you to pause the video and find the move white should play in this position. Okay, so the move is pawn to g4. Somewhat unexpected, and I actually wasn't expecting this during the game, but then I realized just how strong it is, given that white is basically inviting me to capture the pawn on h3. Let's imagine I capture on h3. It is not going to end well for black, after the very simple rook f3. And now we realize the queen is essentially trapped. The only square is queen h6, and then I just walk into a fork. So g4, nice expansion, not worrying about the undefended h-pawn because it is defended by tactics. So going forward here, I had to play the pretty depressing retreating move queen to e8, and then Sam continues applying pressure, pawn g5, and then after what may have been a mistake, but already it's very difficult to play, I played this move knight d7. White now is winning material by force. Again, if you want to pause the video and find the material winning move for white, you can go ahead and do so. The move is bishop to b5, simply pinning the knight to the queen, and as the knight is attacked twice and only defended by major pieces, white is guaranteed to win something here. I went ahead and played queen h5, trying to get some counterplay, but after bishop take d7, Sam won the exchange and then converted without too much difficulty. Just to complete the game, I will zoom forward and just give a general idea of what happened. Played bishop to f3, trying to access this e4 square, but then he plays another strong move. And at the time, the game was very painful for me because I lost and I missed out on winning a lot of money. But looking back on the game, I do have to admire the way that Sam not only got the advantage from what seemed like a pretty dry position for him, but he played beautifully in converting the advantage. And in this position, he played the very nice pawn e4. Because when you're up the exchange, the way you make use of it is by opening files. And to open files, you need to find the pawn breaks. e4 takes advantage of the pin along the d file. And going forward here, I did try and fight on rook f7, e take d5, bishop take d5, another very strong move c4, not caring about a measly pawn, but rather going for the infiltration along the d file. I had to take rook d8, rook f8, rook take f8, king take f8, and now another just incredible move by white, pawn f5. Just so many incredible moves by Sam. And I think most of the incredible moves that we've seen so far this game have been pawn moves. A lot of nice pawn breaks to open up lines, but also pawn moves to control key squares. So the first move that we saw was f4 controlling the e5 square, and then we saw this g4 expansion, and then within the last few moves we've seen e4, we've seen c4, and we've seen f5 just to open up files and expose the black king. So going forward here, e5, king h2, safe move, and then white was cruising to victory. f6 played, wasting not too much time after e4, queen c7, and then there was just a mating attack after queen g7, and then the final tactic f7 finishing things off. I resigned in this position due to queen take f7. It's just met with a simple rook take e4. So at the time, it was painful. It still hurts to look at this game, given that I was crushed just so convincingly. But these games happen, and that's why they're so important to learn from. And I hope those of you who are watching can learn from Sam and learn about kind of this nice positional expansion that he was able to execute in the game, which all started with pawn f4. Going back to this position, it honestly didn't seem too impressive. The opening wasn't too impressive for him, but if you have some positional and tactical understanding in the middle game, it can compensate for maybe not having the most impressive opening. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll be back very soon for another lesson. Stay tuned.
மறக்காம சர்ப்ரைஸ் பண்ணுங்க. Thank you.